Chapter 2: The different faces of a good teacher. Good teachers and trainers are much more than transmitters of information and skills. They facilitate students' learning, and they do this in a number of ways. Technical competence and how teachers approach their work are both important. What is required of a good teacher? Teachers today have a challenging and multifaceted role. Teaching is about much more than the transmission of information to the learner. Teaching encompasses the tasks of planning, preparing and delivering a learning program, and assessing whether students have achieved the expected learning outcomes. Students learn all of the time. It is a natural activity. The job of a teacher is to facilitate this by working with the students to clarify the expected learning outcomes, deliver a program with appropriate learning opportunities, support and facilitate the students' learning, assess the learner's progress in achieving the set goals. An analogy in some respects is the travel agent who, with special knowledge in an area, provides clients with information about their destination according to their specific requirements, assists them to explore the range of options that match their needs, arranges the necessary transport and accommodation, and advises on a program of activities at their destination. What is required of the teacher is demanding. Teaching, Brookfield suggested, is the educational equivalent of whitewater rafting. Figure 2.1: The competencies and attributes expected of an effective teacher. An effective teacher: technical competencies, preparing and giving lectures, small group teaching, teaching practical or clinical skills, facilitating and managing learning, planning a learning program, developing learning resources, assessing trainees, evaluating the educational program, using social media, approach to teaching with understanding of principles of education, with appropriate attitudes, ethical understanding, and legal awareness, with appropriate decision-making skills and best evidence-based education. Professionalism: the role of the teacher or trainer within the health service and university. Personal development with regard to teaching. The good teacher embodies a range of abilities. Teaching is a complex activity that requires the teacher to have a range of abilities. This includes not only mastery of the content area, but also the technical competencies necessary to serve as an information provider, a role model, a facilitator of learning, a curriculum planner, an assessor, a manager, and a scholar. As a professional, the teacher requires a basic understanding of the underpinning educational principles and an appropriate attitude and passion for teaching. If you have the necessary skills, teaching is not a chore, it can be an enjoyable experience and can be rewarding and fun. The good teacher will have a passion for teaching that will help to motivate and inspire students and trainees. The teacher should be an inquirer into his or her own competence and should keep up to date with developments in the field. The attributes of a good teacher are summarized in Figure 2.1. Here lies a problem. Staff development programs and texts on the subject frequently address only the technical competencies or alternatively focus on the educational theory, which may be seen by the practicing teacher as of little relevance. The concept of professionalism and attitudes to teaching are largely ignored. It is now recognized that the effective teacher requires, as shown in the figure, a combination of technical competence, an appropriate approach to their teaching, and professionalism in their work as a teacher. These are described in more detail in the chapters that follow. The multiplication symbol has been used in the equation in figure 2.1 rather than the addition symbol. The implication is that a demonstration of technical competence, no matter how good, on its own is not sufficient. A zero score for the approach to teaching or for professionalism will result in a total score for the teacher of 0. Teaching is both an art and a science. Some teachers are instinctively good teachers, but others are not. The reassuring fact, however, is that the art and science of teaching can be learned. The experienced teacher can develop further their teaching instinct, and the new teacher can be helped to acquire this instinct and the necessary competencies, attitudes, and professionalism. What is required of a good teacher will vary to some extent depending on the subject being taught and in which part of the world the teaching is taking place. There are, however, certain principles, approaches, and views of teaching that are common to the different contexts. We highlight these in this book. It can be argued that the similarities are greater than any differences. The technical competencies of a good teacher. 9 core areas of technical task-oriented competencies for a teacher are described. In Figure 2.1, a teacher should be competent in preparing and giving lectures or presentations that engage the audience and make use of appropriate technology, choosing appropriate small group methods and facilitating a small group teaching session, teaching practical or clinical skills in a variety of settings including the workplace, facilitating and managing the student's learning in a range of settings, giving the learner support to obtain the maximum benefit from the learning opportunities available, helping the student to assess his or her own competence, and providing feedback to the learner as necessary. Planning an education program for the students or trainees that combines appropriate learning opportunities to help them to achieve the expected learning outcomes. Identifying, developing, and adapting learning resources for use by students in the form of handouts, study guides, or multimedia presentations. Assessing the achievement of learning outcomes by the students or trainees using appropriate technologies, including written, performance-based, and portfolio assessments. Evaluating the education program, including the use of feedback from the learner and peer assessment. Using social media. A question to be asked is in how many of these skills does a teacher need to be highly proficient? Depending on the local circumstances, the required level of mastery of the skills may vary. It can be argued that a level of understanding and basic level of proficiency in all of the skills is necessary. When teachers are asked in how many of these competencies they would expect a good teacher to excel, the answers vary from all of the competencies to a smaller number. How a good teacher approaches their work. An effective teacher, in addition to having the necessary technical competencies, approaches teaching with an understanding of basic educational principles. As discussed in Chapter 3, an understanding of basic educational principles helps teachers to adapt the teaching approach to their own situation, to deal with problems and difficulties encountered, and to respond to the need for change as it arises. Appropriate ethics and attitudes. The ethical standards expected of medical teachers in their work as a teacher or researcher in medical education has been a focus of attention. As discussed in Chapter 4, the teacher's attitude is about much more than ethical behavior. A key factor in student learning is the teacher's attitude, passion, and enthusiasm for the subject and for their teaching. Strategies for decision making. Paralleling the move to evidence-based medicine. The need for the teacher to make education decisions informed by the best evidence available is very much on today's agenda. At the same time, the good teacher has to be able to behave intuitively and to respond appropriately to unexpected situations as they arise in the classroom or workplace learning situation. This is discussed in Chapter 5. The good teacher as a professional. Teachers as professionals should be inquirers into their own competence, should reflect on their own teaching practice, and should audit the quality of their teaching. Teachers have the personal responsibility to keep themselves up to date with current approaches to teaching and to communicate their own experiences and lessons learned to others. This is discussed in Chapter 7. An excellent teacher will successfully innovate in the teaching domain and contribute to the development of new courses and curriculum reform. Writing in Scholarship Reconsidered, Boyer described teaching as one of the scholarships expected of faculty or staff in a university.